Hare Krishna. We continue reading from Beyond Birth and Death. We are at chapter 2. In the first chapter, we read that how we are not the body, we are the soul, and then that the nature of the soul is Satchid Ananda, to always be blissful. But now, because we are thinking we are the body, we are trying to enjoy with the body, but we are always being frustrated, not understanding, oh, I'm the soul, so I need spiritual happiness, spiritual enjoyment. So then, coming to the second chapter, Elevation at Death, there are different kinds of transcendentalists who are called yogis, hatha yogis, gyan yogis, dhyan yogis, and bhakti yogis. And all of them are eligible to be transferred to the spiritual world. So depending on which process we follow, which kind of yoga we are following, we will be called Hatha Yogi if we are following the process of Hatha Yoga. If we are following the process of Gyan, we'll be called Gyani or Gyan Yogi. Ashtanga, Dhyan Yogi for the Ashtanga Yogis, and for the Bhaktas, Bhakti Yogi. And all the yogis, when they are perfected, they can go to the spiritual world, because these are, after all, they are authorized paths, valid paths. The word yoga means to link up, and the yoga systems are meant to enable us to link with the transcendental world. So yoga, what does yoga actually mean? Linking, link. Link to where? Link to the transcendental world. As mentioned in the previous chapter, originally we are all connected to the Supreme Lord, but now we have been affected by material contamination. So we are spirit souls, part and parcel of the supreme whole. Somehow or the other, we find ourselves in this material world, inside this material body. And we are thinking we are the body. That is the material contamination. The process is that we have to return to the spiritual world. And that process of linking up is called yoga. So, like when we find ourselves far away from the house, from our home, then we need to go back home. And now we have to find our ways, our way to go back home. And that process is called yoga. Suppose we are abandoned in a ship, we find ourselves in some island or something. We make all endeavor to come back home. So now we are finding ourselves in this material world. We have to endeavor to go back home. Another meaning of the word yoga is plus. At the present moment, we are minus God or minus the Supreme. When we add Krishna or God to our lives, this human form of life becomes perfect. So Prabhupada is pointing out that yoga means to link up or to add. Now, what do we have to add? We have to add Krishna. We have to add God in our life, because we are part and parcel of God. We are spirit souls. At the time of death, we have to finish that process of perfection. During our lifetime, we have to practice the method of approaching that perfection, so that at the time of death, when we have to give up this material body, that perfection can be realized. So this is it's like, Olympics, or like now FIFA was going on. And these players, they are playing in this FIFA World Cup. It's not that they are just coming, they got up from sleep and they said, okay, I'm going to go play in the World Cup. No, they have practice for years and years so that they can play at the World Cup. So similarly, we also have to practice because death is surely going to come. So we practice during the life so that when death comes, we can achieve the perfection of remembering Krishna. Antikale chamameva. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, one who can remember me at the time of death, he attains to my nature. Prayana kale manaschalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena cheva Pruvor Madhye Pranam Aveshya Samyak Sattam Param Purusham Upaiti Divyam. One who, at the time of death, fixes his life hair between the eyebrows and in full devotion engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Gita 8.10. So Krishna is saying that even at the time of at the time of death, if anyone can remember him, then for sure he is going to go back home, back to Godhead. He will be with God. Just as a student studies a subject for 4 or 5 years and then takes his examination and receives a degree. Similarly, with the subject of life, if we practice during our lives for the examination at the time of death, and if we pass the examination, we are transferred to the spiritual world. Our whole life is examined at the time of death. That's why the time of death is called the moment of truth, of how uh, of how we have lived our life. That's how we are going to pass because that will be our next destination. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajyate ante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sadatad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. Gita 8.6. So whatever is our consciousness at the time of death, Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, we are going to attain to that state. Our mind, the subtle body, is going to carry us to the next gross body if we are still in the material consciousness. There is a Bengali proverb that says that whatever one does for perfection will be tested at the time of his death. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes what one should do when giving up the body. For the Dhyan Yogi, meditator, Shri Krishna speaks the following verses. So now Krishna is saying, he's saying whatever state of being one remembers at the time of giving up the body, that state he's going to achieve. Then he's saying, whoever remembers me is going to achieve me. Here he says that. Remember, if anyone is remembering the Supreme Lord, will certainly achieve the Supreme Lord. So now what is he saying about the dhyana yogi, the people who are doing meditation? So what should they be doing when they give up the body? Yad aksharam veda vido vadanti vishanti yad yatayo vitaragaha yad ichanto brahmacharyam charanti tatte padam sangrahena pravakshaye sarvadvarani samyamya manohridi niruddhya cha murdhni adhyatmanah pranam asthito yogadharanam. Persons learned in the Vedas who utter Omkar and who are great sages in the renounced order enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses, and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head, one establishes himself in yoga. So Krishna is speaking to the practitioners of Dhyan Yoga of how they can get perfection. Because the yogi has to control his mind, senses, everything has to be fixed, and he has to bring his life at the top of the head. That's the reason this process is not recommended for us in this Kali Yuga, because we don't know how to do these things. It takes thousands of years to practice to be able to come to this point. In the yoga system, this process is called pratyahar, which means just the opposite. Although during life the eyes are engaged in seeing worldly beauty, at death one has to retract the senses from the objects and see the beauty within. Similarly, the ears are accustomed to hearing so many sounds in the world. But at the moment of death, one has to hear the transcendental Omkar from within. Om iti ekaksharam brahma vyaharan mam anusmaran yaprayati tyajan deham sayati paramam gatim. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. Gita 8.13. So the yogi who's practiced so much and he's chanting the Omkar, and then because he's practiced, he's able to control his mind, senses, bringing everything within himself, raising the life air. And that's how he's able to meditate on the Supreme. Then in that position, he can go to the spiritual world. In this way, all the senses have to be stopped in the external activities and concentrated on the form of Vishnu Murti, the form of God. So the yogi who's meditating, he is not meditating on anything void or just any material thing. He is meditating on the supreme form of Lord Vishnu. We heard also in Kapila Shiksha when we read the third canto of how the yogi is fixing his mind on the Vishnu form. So that is the process of yoga, to fix the mind on the form of Lord Vishnu. The mind is very turbulent, but it has to be fixed on the Lord in the heart. When the mind is fixed within the heart and the life air is transferred to the top of the head, one can attain perfection in yoga. So the yogi, what does he do? He can see the Lord in his heart. His mind is not thinking of anything else. Oh, when can I get up and eat or drink or cook? No, it's just fixed on seeing the Lord in his heart. And his life air, he's put it on the top of his head. At this point, the yogi determines where he is to go. In the material universe, there are innumerable planets. And beyond this universe, there is the spiritual universe. The yogis have information of these places from Vedic literatures. Just as one going to America can get some idea what the country is like by reading books, one can also have knowledge of the spiritual planets by reading Vedic literatures. So if we want to go to a particular country, we can Google. Now we use Google. So we get some information about how, for example, how America looks, what's the currency, what are the basic laws. So now if we want to learn about spiritual life, what have we to do? We can Google, but what are we Googling then? We have to look for the spiritual authority, if they are there on the internet. Otherwise, we have to read from the Vedas, the literatures, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. That's how we have to get spiritual knowledge. The yogis know all these descriptions and he can transfer himself to any planet he likes without the help of spaceships. So because now the yogi, he has gotten enough qualification that he can do this. He knows there are so many spiritual planets, he knows material planets, and he can decide which planet he wants to go to. If you have enough money, then the choice is bigger. You want to go for a holiday in, say, locally in Taiwan, or you want to go internationally, like that. So the yogi, he's gotten enough qualification that he can go to the spiritual world also. Space travel and no need any spaceship. No need for spaceship. Space travel by mechanical means is not the accepted process for elevation to other planets. Perhaps with great deal of time, effort, and money. A few men may be able to reach other planets by material means, spaceships, spacesuits, etc. But this is a very cumbersome and impractical method. In any case, it is not possible to go beyond the material universe by mechanical means. So, It's not very easy to travel by spaceship to another planet. Not easy. And Prabhupada is pointing out, okay, even if it can become possible, it cannot be for the masses. It may be for just for a few handful of people, but not for everyone because it's very troublesome. And even if everyone can go, it will still be limited to the material world, not to the spiritual world. The spaceship cannot enter spiritual world, spiritual sky, no. Like to enter a particular country, we have to have visa, have the landing rights. Similarly, anything material does not have landing rights in the spiritual world. Like a spaceship, for example, does not, material spaceship will not have landing rights in the spiritual world. The generally accepted method for transferal to higher planets is the practice of the meditational yoga system or jnana system. The bhakti yoga system, however, is not to be practiced for transfer to any material planet. For those who are servants of Krishna, the Supreme Lord, are not interested in any planets in this material world because they know that on whatever planet one enters in the material sky, the four principles of birth, old age, disease, and death are present. So if one wants to go to higher planets, the yoga system is there and the Gyan system is there. The meditational yoga. So the Dhyan yoga is there. The Gyan process is there. But what about the Bhakta? The Bhakta, he does not want to go to any material destination. He wants to go to the spiritual world. He knows, even if he goes to Swargalok, higher planetary system, over there also there is birth, death, old age, and disease. So he says, I want to make a permanent solution. I don't want to continue remaining in this samsara of birth and death. On higher planets, the duration of life may be longer than on this earth, but death is there nonetheless. Like in this material world, we are on the earthly planet, so it's in the middle planetary system. There's higher planets like Swargalok, Tapalok, Mahalok. Then the highest planet is Brahmalok, and the ruler is Lord Brahma. But he has to die too. So we can see, even if we go to the highest planet in the material world, we still have to die. Although Lord Brahma's life is very long compared to human life, but still there is death. By material universe, we refer to those planets where birth, old age, disease, and death reside. And by spiritual universe, we refer to those planets where there is no birth, no old age, disease, and death. Those who are intelligent do not try to elevate themselves to any planet within the material universe. So any planet in the material universe we go to, there will be birth, death, old age, and disease. And any planet we go to in the spiritual world will have no birth, no death, no old age, no disease. That's the difference. In the material world, we could be from the hellish planet to the uppermost planet. There will be birth, death, old age, and disease. And in the spiritual sky, there are innumerable spiritual planets. None of them have birth, death, old age, and disease. So, if we are a little intelligent, we will try to go to the spiritual world because we want to get out of this cycle. Again born, again die, again disease, again old age. We don't like to get old. Although we are forced to get old, can't help it. Or disease, we don't like to get disease, but we are forced with it. Death, again, nobody wants to die. We are forced. So then why not go to the spiritual planet where we can live eternally? Did anyone have any comments or questions? So if one tries to enter higher planets by mechanical means, instant death is assured for the body cannot stand the radical changes in atmosphere. But if one attempts to go to higher planets by means of the yoga system, he will acquire a suitable body for entrance. We can see now, if we are to go to the sun planet, if we actually also enter the sun planet, we'll get burnt, Even before we reach there, we are going to get burnt. But if we go by yoga, then we have a suitable body. They are living entities living on the sun planet also. It's not that the sun planet is empty. No, there are living entities living on the sun planet. We can see this demonstrated on this earth, for we know it is not possible for us to live in the sea, in a watery atmosphere, nor is it possible for aquatics to live on the earth. As we understand, even on this planet, one has to have a particular type of body to live in a particular place. So a particular type of body is required for other planets. We can see even on this earth planet, if we were to go live in the water, how long will we survive? We'll have to take our scuba diving suits and oxygen tanks and all that. But just if we go like this, we won't be able to survive. Similarly, if we take out a sea animal out from the sea into this earth, they're going to die because they do not have a suitable body. Similarly, and every planet needs a suitable body to live in. On the higher planets, bodies live much longer than on Earth. For 6 months on Earth is equal to 1 day on higher planets. So the demigods live longer than us. Our 6 months is 1 day of the demigods. Thus, the Vedas describe that those who live on higher planets live upward to 10,000 Earth years. Yet, so if we really want to have a long life, we can go live on the heavenly planet. So it's like living 10,000 years. Now we barely even live 100 years. Go on the higher planet can live for 10,000 Earth years. Yet, despite such a long lifespan, death awaits everyone. So even if someone is living for 10,000 years, still has to die after that 10,000 years. Have to give up that body, take another body in another destination. Who knows where that destination will be? Even if one lives 20,000 or 50,000 or even millions of years in the material world, the years are all counted and the death is there. How can we escape this subjugation by death? That is the lesson of the Bhagavad Gita. So how we can stop this cycle of death? Krishna is explaining us in Bhagavad Gita and we will read it tomorrow. If there are no further comments or questions, we'll stop here. Thank you so much for listening and enjoying. And Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare